It's their fate. You can't change that any more than you can change who they are.
Yeah, Strange, how about no? After the events of No Way Home, all these villains' fates are up in the air. Kinda makes you wonder what might have happened to all these villains once they were sent back to their own universes. Well, that's what I'm here to solve today. There are 6 villains in Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, I'm counting Venom, and today we're going to predict what happened to each of them after they were sent back to their own universes. I'll be covering each of these villains, starting from the least interesting continuation to the most interesting continuation at the very end. You may be surprised on who that ends up being. It's not who you expect. Let's get right into it with the least involved, Venom. Eddie Brock was shafted from this film as the original script for No Way Home had him join the final battle at the Statue of Liberty. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man and Venom would have a touching reunion. Just kidding. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was supposed to die, and the Venom symbiote was supposed to revive him. This is a confirmed detail from the screenwriters that I'm ultimately glad didn't happen. However, that leaves the question, what happened to the guy after he was transported from the bar? Well, it's likely that in Venom 3 we'll pick up right from the point where Venom was transported back into his own world. As we all know, a piece of him was left behind in the MCU, and I'm hoping Venom will be able to pick up on that. Like that piece of him in that other world is letting him being able to communicate with that universe, kinda like a part of his mind and body is traversing different universes. This is a really bold idea, and unlike most of these theories, this is something that can be proven once Venom 3 comes out, so hopefully you guys will call me out if I happen to be right or terribly wrong. As we know, at the end of No Way Home, Eddie was planning to visit Spider-Man in New York, but now that he's back in his own universe, I don't think that plan will necessarily change. Eddie will probably go back to New York like he originally planned, only this is his universe, so Tom Holland's Spider-Man does not exist. But who does exist is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. I'm sure a lot of you saw this coming, as fans have been begging for this to be a reveal. I personally also think this is the right route. I don't think an Amazing Spider-Man 3 is the right move for now. It's too convoluted to have that going on at the same time as Tom Holland. However, Andrew Garfield can still be Spider-Man in the Venomverse, which should be interesting. In fact, there's a rumor that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is supposed to make an appearance in the Morbius movie. Fingers crossed for that. Now, Venom was a quick cameo, but now we're on to the top 5 villains who are actually main villains in the movie. Number 5, we have the Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man. Dr. Connors was probably the least relevant member of the Sinister Five. I don't think we'll ever see him again in any movie, at least not with Ray Fawn's actor, which is a shame. I do think the man's not at fault for the shortcomings of the character. Throughout No Way Home, there is no confirmation as to when the Lizard is taken from The Amazing Spider-Man to the MCU. Last time we saw the Lizard in The Amazing Spider-Man, he was put in prison. However, I think the Lizard was taken during the Rampage final battle at the end of the movie. This is where Lizard is at the height of his diabolical plan, and he's not exactly a nice guy when we meet back up with him in No Way Home. Chances are that when the Lizard is sent back home from the MCU in No Way Home, he's sent back hopefully before he killed Captain Stacy, and he'll be able to be stopped and rehabilitated. Gwen will get to keep his dad, and Peter and Gwen can continue to date with no issues to overcome. Honestly, this is probably the best ending, and it's the reason why it's this low, is because I believe this is what happened in the timeline that Lizard was sent back to. And it's not exactly the most interesting continuation, but it's definitely very happy for our boy Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and that man deserves some love. Before we go on to our number 4, I just wanted to ask, if you're enjoying the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Subscribing is free, and you can always unsubscribe if you don't like me anymore. I do videos like this all the time, so don't worry. Coming up next, we have the Sandman from Spider-Man 3. I think that Sandman is the most underrated villain in all of Spidey cinema. I think he's easily the best villain in Spider-Man 3, and I wasn't fully satisfied with how he was used in No Way Home. He's shafted for the bigger villains like Doc Ock and Green Goblin, which, don't get me wrong, those guys are great, but Sandman has an equally sympathetic and interesting story to explore. And it's a shame that we only got Thomas Hayden Church to reprise his voice role instead of actually being there physically to play Sandman. Sandman is my biggest question, as we don't ever get any clue where he was taken from in his universe and brought over to the MCU. As we know, for when we see Sandman in No Way Home, it seems like him and Spider-Man are on good terms, which leads me to believe that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man probably had more run-ins with the Sandman that we didn't see, which is why there isn't a huge reunion when we see them fight against each other in the Statue of Liberty. As for my prediction, I really hope that Sandman, now that he's a normal person, will be able to go back and help his daughter in a normal and logical way. Now we're on to the top 3, and who's actually surprised that Dr. Octopus is up here? This is the one character that I was most thinking about while watching No Way Home. We know exactly when it was taken from Spider-Man 2, and it leads me to believe that Dr. Octopus is still doomed, but not quite for the same reason. I believe Doc Ock will arrive back to Spider-Man 2, release Peter, and give up his life just as the movie originally did. It retcons nothing, except maybe Doc Ock now has a new perspective on how important it is that he stops his fusion reactor. He learned that the world is much more vast than he originally thought, and now his special project seems to pale in comparison. Doc Ock will die as he did in the movie. Let's move on. Alright, our top 2, and this is a big surprise, but next up we have the one and only Green Goblin. As far as he was taken, there is little hint as to when that was. It's safe to assume that because we saw Goblin with his glider and mask on, it was before the final fight between him and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Something that I find entertaining is if it was during the scene where Goblin was making Spider-Man choose between a cart full of children and Mary Jane. I mean, seriously, imagine if that's when he was taken. Since Norman Osborn is cured by the end of the movie, I could see Norman returning to where the Goblin once stood, not realizing what he's doing, and let them both go. Spider-Man would save both of them, Norman would go to jail for multiple counts of manslaughter and property damage. It's game over. But hey, at least he didn't die, and who knows, Norman is pretty well off, so maybe he'll be able to bail himself out down the line and work on himself. Maybe he can even help Spider-Man fight the likes of Doc Ock and Venom in the sequels. Man, sorry, Lizard, you really should have had more money. Last but not least, surprisingly, we have Electro. Yes, I did not expect his story to be the most interesting either, but here we are. Electro is from The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Jamie Foxx really killed it in the movie, and I think it's obvious he was having much more fun in this role this time around than the last time. Now, by the end, he has cooled off, had a cute moment with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and that was it. What could have happened when he was sent back? We actually have some clues about when Electro was taken. He was in the power grid absorbing data, and just as Gwen was about to fire the overcharge to destroy his brain, Electro was gone. Now, if Electro returned to that exact moment, it's safe to say he would have avoided his death that he was moments away from attending. Electro would probably just be Max Dillon once more, and Peter would be able to call the cops and Electro would be hauled away to prison. Of course, in Amazing Spider-Man, we know that Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin joins the fight moments after Electro dies, and that this makes it a bit more interesting. Max Dillon is now normal, and seeing Harry Osborn, who he had previously worked with, being turned into the Green Goblin could be interesting. Max, having learned his lesson from No Way Home, would try his best to step up. He's not a nobody anymore. He's a man who stands by Spider-Man at all costs, and that's when the Green Goblin will ultimately kill him. I personally think Max Dillon here is a lost cause. He had his arc, but ultimately dying at the hands of Green Goblin sounds very, very likely if he doesn't get hauled off to live the rest of his life in jail. Kinda bleak, but what can you do? Write the movie a different way? Ha! There's another interesting theory that I can't take credit for in regards to Electro and the reason why he's very high on the list. A YouTuber and brilliant man known as Dan Povenmire, the creator of Phineas and Ferb, came up with the idea of Max Dillon appearing at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he saves Gwen Stacy from falling to her death just in the nick of time as Andrew Garfield fails to grab her. As you can see, my take was a bit different, but Electro's outcome is far the most open-ended and fascinating, probably why there are so many rumors of an Electro solo movie.
Really?
They're discussing giving Jamie Foxx's Electro a solo movie.
Don't give Jamie Foxx's Electro a shot. Don't give Jamie Foxx's Electro. You don't need it.
He already lost his powers. What's there to fucking explore?
Who cares?
Oh yeah, this is a good place to plug because it's relevant, but I have a podcast called Get Out of Here where we eat chicken nuggets and talk movies. We discuss Spider-Man No Way Home in great detail there. Please check it out if you guys are interested in hearing more about my thoughts about the movie. If you guys have some cool predictions about these villains, let me know down in the comments below and I'll be sure to check it out. That about covers all my thoughts on what happened to each of the villains after Spider-Man No Way Home. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.